if I was sitting in any country right now and I wanted to do the best thing for the world, I wouldn't say, buy Bitcoin so that we can defeat your central bank. I would say buy Bitcoin because it's better than buying a building. Right? I mean, if I was sitting in Turkey and I was giving a presentation and Erdogan was listening, my message would be, you can invest in a building or a company, but Bitcoin is probably a better investment. It's even better investment than gold because Bitcoin is pure digital energy. It'll be good for Turkey. It'll be good for you. It'll be good for the Turkish lira. Don't you want everybody in Turkey to get rich? I mean,
yeah,
like Bitcoin is an export. Digital energy is an export industry, whereas investing in a building or a piece of land in Istanbul is a domestic industry. So I think that it doesn't matter who you are. Everybody pretty much gets the idea that we're better off if we have 21st century clean export industries that are generating huge cash flows or huge benefits to the domestic economy. So I would say pair it as it is property by law, and the only way it's a legal definition that's defined by the Communist Central Party, by the IRS, by the EU Central, or by the EU in Brussels. You can either embrace that and say it's property. Okay, it's better property. Let's go ahead and replace the other $500 trillion of property with a better property. Why don't we grow 500 to 1? And somewhere around 200 or 300 to 1, we can come back to our political debate about whether we like the idea that governments can have a currency. Like, if you don't like the idea that the government gets to designate the currency, well, you can run for office and you can try to change that. Right. But at this point in time, the likelihood that you're going to get the EU or the Chinese, party or the United States to abandon their currencies is next to nothing. And all you're going to do is you're going to divert 99% of your energy from something constructive. And the constructive thing is to stop people from making mistakes of buying a second rental property as an investment, or buying gold,
right? Or a checking account,
or keeping a checking account, right?
Or a saving account, which is the same thing these days. Yeah,
you don't need to be the enemy of the people or the enemy of the government to promote digital property as a better idea.
I must say you've kind of won me over a lot on this regard. You may not be able to tell from my Twitter and my public pronouncements, but I sympathize with the idea that we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. It's still a very long way away, and at this point, I think the comparative advantages of Bitcoin is just that it is a much better form of property and a much better store of value, and the political implications will come later. And I think the engineering side of me sometimes begins to think we're better off just focusing on this engineering aspect of it rather than just thinking about the political implications, because the political implications are just going to get people in trouble, which we don't want, especially when if you're holding the royal flush in your hands and that this is going to win eventually. Whatever happens, it is just going to win out against all the other kind of combinations of cards that you could come up with. Then you don't need to be going around telling everybody that you're going to be winning. In fact, generally, it's a very bad tactic to celebrate victory before it happens. And I can see the point that, yes, I think you're absolutely correct on the demonetization of gold. It's something that I think is, it doesn't really appeal much to me, being a hard money person, Austrian economics, but I think it's reality at this point. And I think clinging on to gold was probably the biggest financial mistake that I've ever made. I even after I heard about Bitcoin for many years, I still considered no, it's still tiny. Gold is the big deal. Gold is the real thing. There have been pretenders against gold before, but I think this is it. It's over. I think Bitcoin is only about 1/10 of gold at this point, and that's just within throwing distance by Bitcoin standards. So it's clear that gold is being demonetized. It's not rising as everything is rising. You know, you keep pointing out that lumber and copper and nickel have been rising more than gold. And so that's an enormous $10 trillion market of people who still save money in gold and still buy gold. And I think it's, at this point, it's you may as well be holding fiat currency. In fact, you are, in a sense, holding fiat currency because central banks hold about a sixth of all the world's gold. So you're just basically pumping central bank bags when you're buying gold. That's the reality of it. They control the market for gold. They control the market for settlement and clearance of gold. They won't let there be free markets in gold so that you could have a bank built around gold. Moving gold around is still enormously expensive. It can't compete with fiat or Bitcoin in terms of moving it around. And in a global economy, that's a death sentence. And I think in the last century, you could have resisted that death sentence because you didn't have an alternative to gold, but now we do. We have Bitcoin. And I think I also agree with you on the fact that the US dollar is going to basically eat all the other fiat currencies. It's very obvious that all over the world people would rather hold dollars, and I think it's just a matter of the same analysis that I use in the Bitcoin standard about the hard money driving out the easy money definitely applies for the dollar and all the other currencies. The US has an enormously larger margin for inflation than all the other currencies because the currency is just so much bigger. And so, the Turkish lira, Erdogan needs a whole lot of inflation in order to squeeze out a tiny little bit of extra money, whereas the US government needs a very tiny little bit of inflation to finance itself and its military. So I think I agree with that, but I'm wondering, like, how do you see this playing out? Do you really think that the central banks are going to just legalize and allow their banks to hold on to digital currencies? And how does that fit in? You said JP Morgan is going to issue a $1 trillion of stable coin, but won't it just be a central bank digital currency? Why do you even need JP Morgan? Because, you look at the Chinese model with a digital yuan, and you can see, with the universal basic income stuff coming along, why do we even need JP Morgan? Why doesn't the Fed just add an app to the Google and Apple store, and everybody can get $1?
Well, I mean, first of all, the government couldn't do it if they wanted to. If you go back and parse Jerome Powell's comments on the subject, 6 months to 12 months ago, he was pretty much saying that in about 4 years, we'll study it, and maybe in 8 years, we'll do something. And then I think Christina Lagarde at the same time said, well, we've decided we're going to start studying it. And the Chinese were testing it. So in terms of the spectrum, the Chinese were sort of aggressively testing it. The Europeans were thinking about studying it, and the Americans weren't even thinking about studying it yet, to paraphrase. There's no political consensus. There's no political will in this country for the central bank to actually issue currency. You can see that in the utterances of senators and congressmen for the past 3 months. They recoil in horror at that idea. You can also see it with the withdrawal of the name of the candidate for the OCC. Do you see, like, she just withdrew her candidacy because she had articulated support for such a notion as you just described, and nobody wanted to see that. So keep in mind that you think the banks, you think JP Morgan, Bank of America, Citigroup, or the like, you think they would like to see it? So sometimes I think we're too, what is the word, imaginative in our conspiracy theories. You can't simultaneously have a strong banking lobby that's your enemy and then also imagine the government overcoming the same strong banking lobby to also be your enemy, right? So if you see the world in that adversarial way, you think the worst. But a different view is this, which is, it's not bad for the United States dollar to spread around the world. It is not bad if the banks start issuing the dollar. And if people could move the dollar faster on some kind of high-speed crypto rail, then maybe that'd be good for Bitcoin, right? Everybody advances together. So what do I think will happen? Yeah, I mean, I think that you're going to see big banks. You're going to see, it's not clear to me whether JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs will jump on this as aggressively as Silvergate Bank. It's not clear, but it is clear that someone's going to get on this very aggressively. It'll either be like an Avanti, moving forward, or it'll be a Silvergate Bank who have already said they're doing it. I mean, they've been very explicit about it, or it'll be a JP Morgan or a Bank of America that'll do it. Government, again, governments have to be very adept at doing things, and oftentimes they're not. So I don't expect any of these governments to do it effectively. Even in China, I don't think the Chinese government is nearly as effective as their private sector. I mean, we saw that with the Alipay, Alibaba, WeChat type issues. They still have companies, and there is still tension between the companies, the regulators, and the central party, right? I mean, there's a federal level of the Chinese government. Then there's a provincial level. It was provincial politicians supporting Bitcoin mining in China. And then there's regulators, and then there's companies. So it's just hard. And ultimately, you have to have the technical wherewithal to do it. But I guess even then, it doesn't really so much matter what any other regulator thinks, right? The single most important entity here is the United States and the administration, right? Because if the dollar is the world's reserve currency, then the digital dollar, right, as defined by the administration and the regulators, Treasury, et cetera, are going to set the standard for how digital dollars move. And I think it's pretty clear what they want. What they want is either you're an FDIC approved bank or some public regulated entity that meets the same standards. If you read the SEC denial letter on the spot ETF, what they say over and over again is they're troubled by the fact that Bitcoin trades on crypto exchanges that do not meet the standards and abide by the principles of national securities exchanges. And those principles include ideas like don't lie, cheat, and steal from the customer, right? Right? So if you look at the principles there, they're basically saying, we want transparency and a set of principles, and we want them to be abided by in the crypto exchanges. And with the stable coins, they're saying, we want to be able to trust that just like a bank.